room. So I looked at housing location for our students and the rate of how much they passed first period, how those two correlate. So I teach at Conley Carabello High School. It's the continuation high school for New Haven Unified School District. This year we were awarded the title of California Model Continuation High School, which we are very honored and proud to have received. So, being that we're the continuation high school, we're a little slice of the larger district. Currently we have 163 students. We get new students in every quarter, so that number is slightly higher than it was for first quarter. Most of our students are on free and reduced lunch, even though in the city that we serve, there's a big range of socioeconomics. Most of our students qualify for reduced lunch. We also have a larger Latino population in the district. We have about 61% Latino versus around 40% for the district. We also have a smaller Asian and Filipino population in the district. The district is around 20% for both of those categories. It's interesting because they separate Filipino from Asian, and I know that's controversial amongst Filipino people, but that's how our district does it. We have a much smaller percentage of those at our school. So those are the numbers, but I think to really kind of get a sense of our school, it's helpful to get the student voice, so I have a few quotes here for you from students. So one is, this wasn't only a school, this felt like a home where I could be myself and nobody would judge me. They made me feel like I was truly loved and cared for. Another student said, junior year, I started at Conley, and right from the start, I felt less stressed and more welcome. My grades started to get better, and I was actually happy at school. I actually have real friends and supportive teachers that want me to succeed. And the final quote says, I realized all this school does to make sure no one ever feels helpless. You always have someone to go to. Being a small school, we get to have fun activities together and work together as a team. Resources are everywhere, and you can get any help that you need. All right. So I am honored to serve my school as the resource teacher. I've been in New Haven for 4 years now, and I've been serving my school as a literacy coach for the last 3. All right. So we have this sense at our school that while our students struggle to pass all of their classes and all of their periods, they come to us because they have a credit deficiency. So many of them have never passed all of their classes in the past. And then when they have, it's often been a long time in the past, so they need to rebuild those skills or build them for the first time. But first period in particular, the students struggle to pass. So I wanted to explore that more to see how true that was. There's some data about that a little bit later on in the presentation. And I also wanted to see how that correlated to where the students lived in the city. There's also a sense that students who live across town had a harder time passing first period, so I wanted to check that out. My driving question is, what can the school and community do to support students who are earning below average grades during first period? All right, so here is a map of Union City where our district is located. You can see that Conley, or CCHS, we go by Conley as well, is located slightly outside of Union City. We're technically in South Taylor there. And this is a map of all of the schools in New Haven Unified. So even though we're on the edge, the schools are still pretty spread out. So our district tries to have an equitable access to schooling in our area. All right, so I interviewed several students, and then I picked one in particular to his quotes to share with you. There were definitely some patterns that I found in the interviews. In particular, this student said that he took 2 buses to school, but he didn't feel like it was hard to get there. He felt like when he got the buses on time, he got to school a few minutes before the bell rang. But if he missed the bus, he guessed that he had to wait about 20 minutes, and that was pretty much the consensus from the students that I talked to. And then on the way to school, the travel to school, he felt like it wasn't bad. He felt like it was pretty easy. He felt like the bus stops were clean and they were covered, and he didn't have to worry about when it was raining. Felt like it was a fairly smooth trip. So that being said, I still felt like there was a little bit more to the location piece in transportation. So here is our school, this little red dot. This hub right here, the Union City Station, is the BART station, where a lot of other buses of regional transit come together. So we have AC Transit, we have Union City Transit, we have several other options. In a minute, you're gonna see another map where it's showing a lot of students who live in this part of town. So even though they live here, there's not a direct connection because these bus routes come slightly south of our school. So a lot of our students dip down into the middle of the city and then take the 99 that comes back around. I also analyzed the different schedules of the regional maps, or of the regional transits. This one is the UC Transit in particular because the students who live on that side of the town, again, they're taking UC Transit to get to the 99, which is AC Transit. So in particular, the routes that these students are taking are infrequent at the time that they need to come to school. So when I was looking at these routes, the students were estimating 20 minutes, but in analyzing them, it showed that they would actually take 30 minutes. If they missed the bus that they needed to get to school, the next bus was 30 minutes after. Kind of in summary of the transportation piece, some of the strengths are we do have a robust public transportation system in our area, which includes both local and regional options. And there's a bus stop that's across the street from our school, although it's Mission Boulevard, so it's a busy street that can be hard to cross. Some of the weaknesses is that students must take multiple buses from the west side of the city to get to our school. Bus schedules are less frequent, and they have to wait a long time if they miss the bus. Some opportunities are that students ride the bus, or what we've noticed through in my interviews and through talking with some of the stakeholders, later on I'll talk about that, is that students, after they've been at our school for a little while, often form friendships and partnerships where they start carpooling together, but it takes a little while to get to that point. So students, when they first come and they're first building these skills to be on time, to get their work done, they don't have those partnerships yet. So, and then one of the threats that's come up this year is that there's a decrease in access for subsidized student Clipper cards. We used to be able to hand those out, but we don't have access to them currently. All right, so here is some of the data that I analyzed. So I looked at all of the below average grades for all of our kids for Q1. So that includes any Ds that they had for all periods, 1 through 5. So any Ds that they had, or we don't use Fs really in our school, we use no grades because an F means that a student is far below basic, like their skills are really low, versus a no grade, which means you weren't here and you didn't submit enough for me to assess your skills, right? So for first period, as you can see, the combination of Ds and no grades is significantly higher than the rest. And another piece of data that I thought was really fascinating is that for first period, students weren't earning a lot of Ds. Like if they got a below average grade for first period, it meant that they were failing, right? They weren't earning credit for that. And then that rate of failing for first period matched the below average grades for the rest of the periods. So while there's still a lot of work to be done for the rest of the periods, targeting that first period would be at least to begin. Alright. Here's the map. Oh no! I'm not signed in as myself. Sorry guys. Let me think about that. Let me see. Do you have any suggestions, Josh?
You requested access, so if you go back to the Gmail, you should have.
But if you sign out of Aurelio's, is that gonna sign you out of your
Just
presentation?
go back to the Gmail tab, the second one. And then if you go back to his inbox, sorry.
Sorry, Aurelio.
No problem.
Oh, sorry.
Because you're gonna have to give
I
permission
have
from
to go
your
into
email
my
account.
email
You can just,
account.
log that out.
Sorry, guys. can just pull it up from here. Thanks for your patience, everybody. I know. So much buildup. I did kind of, it was interesting to see. Okay, so. Let's take you through this one at a time. So here is our school, again, it's a little red dot. And then the main comprehensive high school, James Logan High School, is right here, and our district offices are here, just for reference. Okay. So students who are failing first period, who are getting no grades for first period, but passing most of the rest of their classes, are here in green. And as you can see, there's definitely a concentration on the west side of town. Okay. And then students who are failing first period and failing most of the rest of their classes, who are failing most of their classes, are slightly more spread out across our city. However, there's still a concentration here on the west side. Right. And then students who are earning Ds, which also was interesting to crunch the data, because if they were earning a D for first period, they were also passing most of the rest of their classes, which was really interesting to see. Are much closer to us. So there's more of a concentration closer to school. So that pattern was just really fascinating to me to look through and to share with my people at work. All right. So I interviewed a number of stakeholders because I got really excited and I was like, what do you think about this? In particular, I chose our community service technician and our school counselor because they deal with students who come late a lot. Our CST is usually the person who's out and about and greets students when they arrive, and then our school counselor often follows up with kids who aren't passing. So our CST basically was saying that he was not surprised by the data. It pretty much confirmed what he thought, that students who lived on the west side of town arrive later, and they tend to arrive about 20 minutes late when they come late, which is halfway through the period. He also pointed out that there are a fair amount of students who live on the west side of town who are getting to school on time. And so from his perspective, the students who weren't just needed to learn that skill. They needed to kind of get it together a little bit. Our school counselor had a similar perspective, but with a slight twist to it. So she talked about also that she wasn't surprised by the data, and she pointed out many of our students at Conley in general are working full time. They are taking care of younger siblings. They have a lot of other responsibilities outside of school, and for her perspective, if they're closer to school, then it just makes it a little bit easier for them. That it adds another layer that is a barrier for students having to come from across town, and possibly cross through neighborhoods that they wouldn't normally feel welcome in. All right, so here are some of my suggestions, short term, medium term, and long term. So for the short term, for the immediate, I think one of the things that we can do is hold what we call a graduates club. This happens after school 2 days a week, and it's a time for students to stay in a specific classroom with a teacher to get caught up on whatever they might have missed. So to hold a graduates club on the west side of town. One of the assets of our district is that we have school sites across the city. So we could easily tap into some of our sister schools on the west side and hold a graduates club there. Also coordinating with office staff and other administration to analyze further data, looking a little bit deeper into what's happening for periods 2 through 5. I think we'll be curious to see what else we can find there. Medium term, I think adding a temporary 6th period graduates club to the schedule. So one of the things that we did this year was we added a 0 period to the official schedule for the students, and just adding that even though they don't, for credit recovery. So even though they don't get credit for showing up, they only get credit for completing their credit recovery work. Just adding that officially into their schedules has really increased the rate when it was just a come in because you should get work done, nobody came. Okay, so adding in a temporary sixth period, which is after school hours technically, or a temporary zero period, if we know that a student got a D or an NG on a progress report. And then also more actively connecting students and families to each other who are coming from the west side, so we're not just waiting for them to do it on their own. And then long term, we floated, the last couple of years, we floated the idea of a flex schedule at our school, which, with the goal of allowing students to take courses at different parts of the day, like in the morning or in the evening, or flipping things around. I think that'd be really interesting to explore. And then also possibly creating creating a school ride-sharing account, like a Lyft or an Uber or something like that, for students who just need that little bit of an extra boost.